Alright, so BlizzCon has happened. We have a new expansion, Descent of Dragons. It will be the last expansion of this current year of the dragon, which means that obviously all of these cards got to be super OP, and definitely some of them are. There's also a few new mechanics that we're going to have to go through. Not too complicated, but some of them take a little bit of explaining. Most of the mechanics of this expansion revolve around a single card. There's a bunch of other like side stuff here as well, but we're gonna just go through the cards one at a time and explain things. And starting off with the king complicated card is Galakron the Nightmare. So the one that we're seeing right now is the rogue specific card, in which you will be able to upgrade it every time you invoke it, which are done with other cards, as you can see the right battle card invoke Galakron. Every time you get 2 invokes on Galakron, you get to upgrade the battle cry into something better. In the rogue experience, it is drawing cards and making them cost 0. Once you get it invoked all the way, you get 4 cards that all cost 0. And you, on the last stage, will also get a 5/2 weapon off of any iteration of this card. And when I'm saying iterations, it's because Galakron is with the League of Evil, meaning that Shaman, Priest, Warrior, Warlock, and Rogue all get this card, but in different variations. It also means that the invokes for Galakron will be different based off of what class you are. In the Rogue example, we have the invokes giving you a random lackey in your hand, but in the Priest example, we have the invokes giving you a random Priest minion in your hand. And the invoke effect reflects off of the hero power that Galakron will have once you play him. So in the Rogue example, your hero power is 2 mana to get a random lackey, whereas the Priest one is 2 mana to get a random Priest minion in your hand. Galakron overall is more of a value generation tool, but the battle cry gives you immediate tempo on board in some way, it seems. The Warlock version summons demons, the Rogue one draws you 0 mana cards, the Priest one destroys minions. It all basically is interact with the board in some way. We don't know what the Shaman and Warrior Galakrons do at this time. I've looked around and tried to find stuff, but it seems like people haven't either tested it or haven't known to look at it at BlizzCon. But if there's any footage of a warrior playing Shield of Galakron or a shaman playing Shield of Galakron, and the battle cry does something, that'll at least tell us what the hero power of Galakron is going to be for those classes. I haven't found anything like that. I've only seen Priest, Warlock, and Rogue, because Rogue was the example. But hopefully we'll see the rest of that soon. With that in mind, you can kind of get an idea of the power level of Shield of Galakron as far as like where it is. It's basically like, I want to say Rotten Apple Bomb, but a little better. Because Apple Bomb obviously doesn't interact with the board, but Galakron does, because it gives you either a resource to use, or it gives you... for Warlocks, the invoke is imps. So yeah, it's always either a resource to use on board at some point or immediately. So yeah, very solid card. And all the invoke effects for class-specific cards will only obviously reflect the class that can use them. But if you were to get the card in the other class, then you could get a different invoke effect with it. So like in the example of Seal Fate, this is a rogue card, which will give you a lackey, but if you were to play it in Priest, it will give you a random Priest minion instead. 3 mana, 3 damage to get a lackey. It's solid. It's like better, way better than the rat, honestly. So yeah, the card's insane. The only issue is with the invokes, they aren't like battle cry effects, so you can't like use them with Shark, but you can at least use the lackeys with Shark. And again, 3 damage to undamaged, and gaining a invoke on Galakron is totally fine, especially if you intend to get Galakron pretty big. And lackeys are fine. So yeah, good card. But even better is Lightning Breath. Now, I don't know about dragons in Shaman at the moment, since there's not too much released to support that, but dealing 4 damage to a minion and then its neighbors is basically Flame Strike for 3 mana. So the card, as far as power level goes, is ridiculously good. It's just a matter of whether or not we get more dragons in the set, which, given it's the dragon set, I think is pretty likely, but I don't know if you're going to really be able to have the ability to run dragons in something like Quest Shaman or have the same power level as Quest Shaman, because Quest Shaman is just so freaking good. I don't imagine this will be good unless the dragons that Shaman specifically gets or that are in the set neutral are just insane overall. So we'll have to see. At the very least, Shaman will get Galakron. So Galakron Shaman version might be like dragon related. And if it was, then I could see this maybe working. But we'll have to see. Speaking of dragons, from what I can tell, every class is going to get their own dragon, but I'm not entirely sure. We've at least had a number of dragon legendaries between the different classes that have been released. Ysera is the druid one. 9 mana 4/12 as Ysera always is, but the effect is to summon a random dragon after drawing a portal that you add to your deck. Honestly, I don't think the power level of the card is particularly high, given that it seems like we're adding a lot of smaller dragons to this set, in addition to some like medium-sized to big dragons. I think the average stat line is still somewhere around a 5/5, so I don't think it's that bad. But as far as like late game options in Druid, if you can make it that far in Druid, you may as well just be playing Quest Druid, and Quest Druid is still really good. So we'll have to see. I think the card in Dragon Druid, if you were to play it, wouldn't be that bad. I just don't know if you played over like actual Ysera or Alexstrasza or Deathwing, all classically good dragons to have when you're playing ramp. So we'll have to see. It'll probably be tested. If it ends up being good enough, people will run it. Speaking of dragons in Druid, we have Breath of Dreams. Hold a card that's a dragon, gain an empty mana crystal, and draw a card anyway. Now, what I would be interested in knowing is if you draw a card and then it happens to be a dragon, do you gain the empty mana crystal? I don't quite know how that works, because the draw a card effect happens first before it checks, maybe? If that's the case, then it's a slight bit better, but I don't think it matters too much even if it doesn't. It's Wild Growth, 2 mana, good in ramp, and ramp likes to play dragons. And even if ramp isn't exclusively a dragon deck, I don't imagine it would be too hard to fit a few dragons in just to get your ramp deck to function more properly. We still have a 3 mana ramp card in Wild Growth, of course, but also the one Death Rattle one, I believe. So you can still get it to happen, but I think if you're gonna try and go for ramp, you gotta do it early. So I think you have to commit to the dragon at least a little bit. One way you can do that is for Draconic Lackey, Battlecry Discover Dragon. It's basically, what is it, Another Spite Historian? Except you don't have to hold the dragon to get it, and it's 1 mana less, so it's like huge power creep on that card. You only lose 2 health for 1 mana. That's like really, really good. And it's not even like restrictive in that you need to hold a dragon, so the card's just like way higher in power level than Another Spite Historian was. Another Spite Historian saw a ton of play in mid-range dragon decks, so I think as far as like mid-range dragon goes, this card's like instant, like put this in there please kind of stuff. Even like Dragon Warrior would play at least some Another Spite Historians at the start. I don't think they played it later on. I think I only played like maybe 1, if none, because I wanted to focus more on tempo. But for stuff like Dragon Priest, I could definitely see this being a thing. If Dragon Priest resurges again, which it might. Dragon Bane, 4 mana, 3/5 mech and hunter. After you use your hero power, deal 5 damage to an enemy. So it's Inspire, but it doesn't have the Inspire keyword, probably because they just don't want to add extra Inspire synergy to the prior sets by accident. So by not having the keyword, you get to dodge like any kind of Inspire synergy that was in the Grand Tournament set. But I don't know if there's anything even that scary, honestly, that is like Inspire synergy specific. I think it's all still hero power related, so that might just be overly cautious for no reason. Anyway, as far as like the card goes, dealing 5 damage to random enemy, it's like basically Ragnaros. 8 damage is typically a bit overkill in most cases anyway, and because it comes at 4 instead of 8, it is coming 4 turns earlier, so it's dealing with mid-range minions instead of late-game minions, so it's effectively doing the same thing, and it can also hit your opponent in the face for 3 damage at the same time as dealing 5 damage to a random enemy every turn you hit the hero power. So it's a really high power level card, and because it's a mech, it fits a mech hunter, so because it already has a Feng Chain deck, the card is just really good. Whether or not mech hunter is actually a deck, who knows, but we'll have to see. A Dwarven Sharpshooter, your hero power can target minions. The last time we had this was a 2-mana 2/3, which saw no play at all, and this is a 1-mana card. The fact that it's 1-mana card means that it might see play, but I think that you're better off using something that has either more stats or a better on-play effect. Even freaking 1/1 Rush is probably better than this card as far as like the immediate value of that card. This is like, well, let's think of it at 3 mana. So if we think of it at 3 mana, it's like the what is it, Stormpike Commando, like the 3 mana 2/2 that does 1 damage, but with like the class specific buff of now doing 2 instead of 1. But even with that comparison, Stormpike Commando is like never ever run. So you would have to get a lot more hero power synergy for this to actually see some play. There is a bit more hero power and synergy in Hunter. You can see one below it, but there's like a like side quest card as well. So maybe if there's like a lot of support with it, it might happen, but I'm still kind of unsure right now. Outworld Explorer is a solid card. Taunt, 4/8, good stats. It's like the Cthulhu card, except they put more into health, and they made it anti-priest because it's 4 attack, so they have to run their new 0 mana thing on it. And battle card Discover a Dragon, so you can go infinite with it sometimes. They unweighted the class-specific discovers, but that still doesn't mean it won't happen. And on top of that, the stats, unlike like Primordial Drake, come 2 turns earlier on turn 6, so you can really start fighting the mid-range very early on. So I think the card is just really good. Would definitely go into Ramp Dragon Druid, Ramp Mid-Range Dragon Druid. I don't know if that will be better than our current Quest Druid, but it's very competitive. It could definitely happen. Alright, now I get into like the complicated reviews. Because with Dragonbite Cultist, we have Invoke Galakron, get +1 attack for each other friendly minion 1/1. So it looks like it sucks, and it kind of still does. But the Invoke for Warlock is to summon 2 imps, so it's really a 3 mana 3/1 with 2 1/1s as its battle cry. And it can go to a 4/1 and a 5/1 depending if you have more. So if you have Demon Synergy and if you have high minion number synergy like Sea Giants or something like that, the card's actually quite good. Where I think it lacks, of course, is in metas where there's lots of 1 damage AoE. But overall, like being able to summon what is like the microbot effect is still pretty competitive in most like minion swarmy kind of decks. Token Druid did that for a time, so it's not like the card would never see any play. I think we just need to have more board buff specific stuff to do in Warlock. Specifically kind of like Phoenix Strikes, which is also a Warlock card. Invoke Galakron, so summon 2 1/1 imps and give your minions +1 attack. So you would liken this to, say, the Implosion, but it doesn't suck. So having Implosion, but it doesn't suck is obviously way better. Or not Implosion, it's the Inferno. It's way better Inferno because it ends up not being specific to demons, and it ends up being not so reactive because it was off of a 1 damage AoE and giving a buff. In this case, you just summon minions and then give all your minions a buff. So you can just play it and not feel stupid about it. I would say 3 mana, what is this? 3 mana 2/2/1s. Is that equivalent to anything? I guess it's kind of equivalent to Murloc, but you also get to invoke Galakron. So it's actually just a solid card if you're playing Galakron, which if you're playing both of those cards, you're going to play Galakron because you may as well just reap the benefits from playing these. So yeah, I think the cards are pretty good. Not like insane, but pretty good. I think Galakron Warlock is a little bit of a weird spot because it is a imp summoning hero power, so it's you basically switch to Paladin. You also get to summon lots of demons as the result of the battle cry, which is nice. And if you get the 5/2 weapon, even better. So it's like a good finisher in the same vein of Gul'dan was in Zoo. But I don't know if the consistency of the deck is lessened by the fact that you have the invokes. It also kind of depends on how many invokes we get for each class. I would imagine you would at least get 3, but maybe not. Maybe we only get 2. And if this is all that you get for invoke, it's going to need a lot more help from the neutral side. Right now, we only have 1, right? Yeah, we only have the shield. So we're going to need a little bit more than that before we can actually get rolling with this deck to understand if it's going to be mid-range or not. I feel like it's better off as more of a like hyper aggro zoo with like some mid-range in it, kind of like how Doom Guards were like the upper level of some zoo lists. Putting in Sea Giant instead would make sense, but we'll have to see. All right, we have Evasive Draconid. It's Sagoth, but for 2 less mana, so it's completely insane. It's also a dragon, which is relevant to this set. I think as far as like mid-range finishers go, this is like top-tier mid-range finisher because you can't deal with it with anything other than minion combat, which is like ridiculously good. You could also use Twisting Nether, I suppose, but it becomes a turn earlier than most destroy effects. Well, it comes a turn earlier than that. You could use a non-targeting destroy effect on that, but those are pretty rare. There's poison, of course, but like poison is also pretty rare. So I think you would think of this like a 1 mana more and a Draconid Crusher for the ability to not have to worry about targeting. I think that's well worth it, and even get taunt on top of that. So yeah, like if you could still run Dragon Warrior, you would probably run this card instead of Draconid Crusher, which means the card is just like a really starting include in those kinds of decks. So I think the card's good. We have Phase Stalker. It's a beast. 2 mana, 2/3. It's a Lisa Croc. And then after using your hero power, add a secret to your deck. It is not, or cast a secret from your deck. It is effectively Mad Scientist, where you just put the secret into play. It does not like cast the effect. You don't like suddenly gain explosive and then like do 2 damage to the enemy board or anything like that. So I think the card, I guess we liken this to the Mage card, where you would discover a secret and put into play, and it was a 2/2. That card's pretty good. This card gets 1 extra health from the Beast tag. It is more flexible, and that can be played at 2 mana, which is nice. But it's less flexible as far as like use over time, in that you do not always get the secret because you could run out of them from your deck. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. As long as you're playing like an apt number of secrets, you could play this and be okay. I think the main problem with this is that it's 4 mana, and that there's a significantly better secret-related Hunter card at 4 mana that summons a 4 mana 7/7. So I don't know if you would really want to be like, you know what I'd really like to do at 4 mana? Play a 2/3 and summon a secret from my deck, instead of, having the secret at 2 mana and then playing a 4 mana 7/7 on turn 4 or turn 3 with the coin. So yeah, I'm not like super convinced. It doesn't suck, but it's not like super impressive. So we'll have to see how good like continual draw ends up being, because that's kind of what ends up being. We still have Subject 9 in Hunter, which is fine for now. You could maybe put it in Singleton Hunter as like a means of drawing on top of that. Some lists do that. I could see it, but unsure other than that. Just praise Galakron. Give me +1 attack, invoke Galakron, which in this case I believe that is Rogue, so we gain a Lackey. +1 attack, gain a Lackey. So it's like a better version of the Discover a Lackey in Warlock, because we really kind of accept that all Lackeys are good, and even not having the choice to discover it, it's probably just as good as that. So I would say this card is like slightly better than that. I don't think it's significant enough to be like OP or anything, but like as far as like synergy goes, it works with Gadget Sand Auctioneer. It works as a activator twice, which is nice. It's not really comparable to Cold Blood in any way, but you can definitely compare it to Cold Blood as like a 2-mana push kind of card. So yeah, it's not bad. I think if Miracle Rogue were ever to exist, it could definitely see some play that way. So, maybe. Twin Tyrant, deal 4 damage to 2 random enemy minions. It's a dragon. I would say it's not as good as Crowd Roaster, and there's definitely better late game than this. So, I don't think it sees play. Not until Crowd Roaster leaves. But if Crowd Roaster is gone, then maybe you use this as a replacement. And it doesn't have the Hold the Dragon effect. But if you're playing this, you're probably going to be playing with Dragon Synergy. So I think Crowd Roaster is just better. We have Umbral Stalker. If you've invoked twice, add 3 coins to your hand. 3 coins is pretty ridiculous as far as like the payoff goes. If you're playing Miracle Rogue or just Rogue in general, that means like what, next turn 5, you can play something 8 mana, so you can just like slam Rag on turn 5. It's pretty gross. But it'll really depend on whether or not Rogue needs coins in the deck to be good. It might not. If coins are good, then the card's insane. If coins aren't good, then the card probably won't see any play. So I guess it's more of a timing related thing. But as far as the power level goes, it's very high. Veiled Worshipper, kind of the same vein. If you invoke twice, draw 3 cards. 4 mana 5/4 is great stats. And the fact that if you're playing Invoke, you're probably trying to draw Galakrond at some point. So drawing 3 cards definitely makes it easier to do that. Even if you are a Warlock, it's nice to not have to necessarily pay life or mana to actually draw the cards. And a 5/4 is, again, fairly competitive stats. So yeah, it's a good card. Lord Draconics, this is the first side quest that we've seen. It does take up the quest slot, but it doesn't start in your hand, so you just kind of draw it whenever. Spend 8 mana spells, reward summon a 6/6 dragon. It's best saved for the turn where you know that you can get it off soon. So it's like, it's much more of a control card in that you would save it so that it ends up getting you tempo in a turn where you clear your opponent's board. You would never play this in like an aggro deck. You would never play this in a mid-range deck, I feel, just because it ends up being too inconsistent when you get it, and you end up obviously passing 1 mana the turn that you end up playing it. So I think it's best suited for control. And the prospect of Flame Striking and summon a 6/6 dragon on top of that is definitely pretty attractive. I just don't know what we'll get rid of in Control Mage, or if Control Mage is even possible. I know right now we're playing like Spellslinger Mage, which obviously isn't even attempting to pay any mana on any of their spells, but there might be a world where we play some slightly more expensive spells and control stuff if Mage gets like some more consistent healing, or well, actually no, we have some pretty consistent healing, so maybe if Mage gets like enough control support, like AoE. Are we missing much AoE right now? Got like Flame Strike and Blizzard, of course. We have the one overkill get extra cards thing, but we don't have any like small AoE, do we? I can't think of anything right now, but if there's enough support for it, and if the other late game decks aren't completely insane, then maybe this will be played in that. All right, new cards. Primordial Explorer, Poisonous, 2/3, so it's already Cobra, and it's a dragon, so yeah, it's basically Cobra, and on top of being Cobra, you draw a card, and it happens to be a dragon. I would say this card in Dragon Hunter is very good, but whether Dragon Hunter is actually good is another story. Dragon Hunter has some minor support, very, very minor support. There are some specific Dragon Hunter cards. It looks like we will also be getting another dragon. As you can tell that each class is going to get another dragon, because if you look at like the art, ends up being the dragon that the class is going to get. So looks like Hunter's getting whatever the heck this corrosive thing is. Looks to be poison related. So interesting to see that coming. But as far as the card power level goes, it's very high. I just don't know whether or not Dragon Hunter will actually be a thing. You might just still play it though, just because it is basically just 3 mana don't commit any resources, play an insane card. So it's good enough on its own that it might see play anyway. Malygos Aspect of Magic. This is the Mage Dragon, and it is if you're holding a dragon, discover an upgraded mage spell. These mage spells are typically ridiculously overpowered for their mana cost. The example that we've seen played many times in the video is you get a 5-mana Flame Strike that also does 8 damage. So yeah, the result that you get from this effect is going to be really freaking good. The only problem is it's only that. So if you're going to end up trying to have this card win the game for you, it will only win the game for you probably against like aggro or mid-range. Against control, you're going to need a better game plan. So I think Mage still needs some kind of control game plan in order to actually beat the opponent's like game plan, because of like, who's the king of late game right now? I would say probably Druid. As far as like way late game, if you get a Druid into fatigue, they're just going to kill you with Malygos combo. So they need something kind of in that vein or to be able to contest that. There's a lot of anti-combo tools, so it could still happen. But Druid is less restricted in their deck building because of that. So I don't know, I'm just rambling. The card's still really good, so it'll probably see play. Deathwing, Mad Aspect. Attack all other minions. So it's an 8-mana AoE that might not destroy everything your opponent has, and also could be played as a minion if there's no minions to kill. So it's more of a control tech than it is an aggro tech, because it's meant to be flexible but still be an AoE. I think its purpose is bad. If you're trying to tech against control, you should just pick the greediest possible thing you can think of. And Deathwing Mad Aspect is not that. I would probably pick something like Ysera, just as a means of getting another card on top of playing a 12 health thing that's hard to kill. The fact that it kills all their minions also means that you end up damaging your own board. So you can't really play it unless it's the only minion that you have, or if you have like a specific order where you can like play a 2-drop first, or a 2-drop after this, 2-drop after this. Yeah, I don't know. I think the card kind of sucks. We'll have to see. But I'm pretty sure that this will never see any play at all. We have Waxadread. Death Rattle. Shuffle a candle into your deck that resummons Waxadread when drawn. So it's infinite value, and you only play the 5 mana up front, but never again after that. So yeah, the card's really, really freaking good. And I think in mid-range Rogue, definitely worth playing. Just getting random tempo for no real reason is always appreciated. Rogue would play, what is the spider? The 4-mana 4/4 spider thing in some mid-range lists. I think this is kind of like that. And it ends up being endless. If you play the crystal thing on top of that, then, well, the draw your deck thing, if you end up playing that with this, then you can just put this into your deck every time and then draw it the next turn. It comes back as a 7/5 for free. You can still take the fatigue, but it ends up that you always have it on board no matter what, which is cool. Yeah, I think the card's good. It'll probably see some experimentation or play. Corrosive Breath. It's a 100 breath card. Deal 3 damage to minion for Holy Dragon. It also hits the enemy hero. This will mainly depend on how much you can fit dragons into the mid-range-ish style, or if you just want to have 3 damage for 2 mana as Hunter. Excuse me. I think 3 mana for 2 damage, not really that important at the moment for Hunter. So I think it just has to be like a perfect fit for whatever deck it goes into for it to actually see any play, because there's just better cards overall than this. Might be seeing some experimentation. There is the spell damage card stuff though, like the bow. But then you have to hit a minion. It could be your minion though. That's true. Maybe it helps combo Malagos Hunter work a bit. There's no real means to discount the cards, the costs of spells right now, but I could see maybe some experimentation. I don't know. I'm not super impressed. We'll have to see. Candle Breath. Draw 3 cards. Cost 3 less for holding a dragon. 3 and a draw 3. Completely insane. Just kind of depends on how many dragons you can fit. And I guess a side note for fitting dragons, Amalgam still exists. So because Amalgam exists, dragons are always going to be a little easier to fit than normal because it's a dragon as well as every other tribe. So might not be as hard as you think. Drawing 3 cards in Rogue for 3 mana, yeah, I think they'd do that. I think they'd do that if they could. So if we can somehow fit it, then yes, it'll probably see at least a 1-of in some decks. Sand Breath. Give me +1/+2. If you're holding dragon, give it Divine Shield. So that's what, like shielded mini bot for 1 mana? Basically. Shield mini bot's obviously very good. Again, it'll just depend on how many dragons... Excuse me. How many dragons you could actually fit in the deck. But overall, it's not bad. Need to be like a kind of aggressive-ish thing to work. It could also work in ramp, or not ramp, dual paladin, because it is a low-cost spell. Toxic Reinforcements. Side quest for Hunter. Use your hero power 3 times. Reward is summon 3 leper gnomes. So clearly we were on the burn plan. This is a good late game finisher card on top of Leroy. I don't know if you run 2 of these with Leroy, but you could definitely run 1 of them with Leroy. This puts you at a 12 threshold range with those 2, including the hero powers. It's 18. I could see it. It might work. It's definitely a lot of damage for 1 mana. Fireball for 1 mana. If it's directed at the face. Definitely not bad. Azure Explorer. Spell damage +2. Battle card Discover a Dragon. So it's like the same. I guess we have an Explorer for each of the good classes as well. Because we have Hunter God Explorer. Azure Explorer for Mage. Emerald Explorer for Druid. So who's the last one? Finley for Paladin. So I guess Paladin's getting an Explorer Dragon as well. It makes sense. It'll be interesting to see what the extra effect for the Paladin one's going to be. But spell damage +2, it's okay. I don't think that's anything to write home about, but Discovering a Dragon, it might be played in a dragon deck just because it's a dragon that gives you a dragon. So you don't always lose the card in hand. I don't think we've seen, I guess we haven't gotten the breath for Mage yet, but we haven't seen much dragon synergy in Mage, so I don't know if this would even need to be played. But again, there's more of this set. We'll have to see. Fate Weaver. If you invoked twice to reduce the cost of cards in your hand by 1, this card's completely crazy because it enables combo. So it's going to see play, definitely. Be very afraid of this card. This card's really good. It's like Emperor Thaurissan being released specifically for Priest. So yes, it's good. Speaking of Priest cards, Time Rip. Destroy minion, invoke Galakron. So destroy minion, add a random Priest minion to your hand. Yeah, it's good. It's Assassinate for Priest. I think Priest isn't necessarily in need of more single target removal, but they might just play this for the sake of invoking Galakron instead of like Death or something. So yeah, it'll probably see some play specifically in the Galakron deck, but I don't think in anywhere else. Devoted Maniac, Rush, Battlecry, invoke Galakron. Solid neutral Galakron card. Will definitely see play. Announcement trailer. Nostromo the Timeless, 4 mana, 8/8. Whoa. Setties player's mana crystal the 10 mana. Oh. For the record, 10 mana are empty, so you do not then suddenly also get to play Tyrion alongside of Nostromo the Timeless on the same turn. That does not happen. The opponent gets the 10 mana first. But you get an 8/8 first, so that's pretty cool. I would think this is more of a meme than anything else, specifically because you give your opponent the 10 mana first. And if they are mid-range or if they are control, they're not going to be fazed by this at all. And if you try to build your deck around this, it won't work because you'll not be able to draw the card. I guess the only real argument for this is playing this in dual paladin, but then it's like you're cheating it out with dual. You even need to get 10 mana. I guess you get to just play your cards early in another fashion, so maybe it's worth it. Maybe you play a dual paladin. Maybe it's worth it. Still seems kind of memey though. I don't know. I feel like dual paladin doesn't need this card, but I wouldn't be surprised if it were to play it. Huh. It's not like that druid 0 mana thing. It's not so detrimental that it freaking kills you, because your opponent still has to commit resources into you that they may not have the same mana push as you do. Like in the same vein as where you would play that card and then you would play something at like 8 mana and your opponent would play something fast at 3. You could get the better end of the deal, but again, I feel like it's just so risky. So I'm not convinced. I'm gonna have to really argue with myself to play this card, I think. But I don't think you would. Molten Breath. Deal 5 damage to minion. If you're holding a dragon, gain 5 armor. So for 1 extra mana, you can change the extra card you get from shield block into 5 damage instead. 5 damage for 4 is good. Kills most mid-range minions. Excuse me. But we already have Molten. Not Molten. Mortals. So we can already deal 4 to 6 damage for 4 mana. It's nice to get the 5 armor. So I guess if you're playing specifically Dragon Warrior, it might be worth playing it. And Dragon Warrior is an archetype at the moment. It's a little bit slower, so this does make sense in that archetype. So might actually see play. Dragon Sword. Discover a legendary minion from another class. It's another hoarding, stealing card. So it'll see play in that deck. Sathrovar. Choose a friendly minion. Add a copy of it to your hand, deck, and battlefield. It's like, what if you wanted to play Faceless, but you wanted to be really, really greedy about it? Because not only do you get a 5/5 on top of the Faceless, but you also get 2 copies of the card, 1 in hand, 1 in deck, on top of it. So it doesn't really enable anything that Faceless couldn't already do. So I feel like it's more about the tempo and the mid-range value than anything else. But it could also be really, really good if you were to cheat out its battle cry in some way. Like, if you were to play this in freaking Quest Shaman, that'd be interesting. But you can't play it with hero powers, so I'm thinking that probably won't happen. Not unless you save the coin, but Shudderwock's way better at that. Yeah, I don't know. Same like you can think of this like, all right, what if you got a Malagos and you managed to stick it and then you make a copy of Malagos and put 1 in your hand and 1 in your deck? That's cool and all, but is it worth it? Would you rather just play Faceless for 4 less mana? Or maybe even less than that if you can reduce the cost even more? I think you probably would. So, I don't know if this card has a place right now. Somebody will probably have to science around with it to see. But that is it. As far as all the new cards, as far as I know, there is nothing else. Yep, they haven't released anything in the next couple of minutes, so this should be at least our first review. See you next time.